Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. Trango Systems has recently launched its US branch, Trango USA, and today we're speaking with the person heading it up, Eric Perez, Director of Trango USA. Eric has a strong background in military and law enforcement training, and we're going to unpack some of that experience in this conversation. Eric, to kick things off, can you introduce yourself and tell us about your experience in training and tactical infrastructure?
So my name is Eric Perez. Let's see. I grew up in Georgia. I joined the Marine Corps in 1997 and did 4 years as a Marine with a unit called Fast Company. So I was a part of 2nd Fast, 4th Platoon. I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps while I was in Fast Company. A couple things that I did is I was able to do 2 operational deployments. First one was in Japan. Nothing really crazy out there, but we did a lot of training. At the time, um, I was the training NCO for the platoon. And then on my second deployment, I actually went to the Middle East, where I actually deployed to Bahrain, Qatar, and Yemen at the time. And I was also the training NCO for that. So the way I got into training was after my 2 deployments, I only had about 9 months left in my enlistment. So I only did 4 years of my enlistment. And I was put into the S3 shop, which is the operations and training side, and I was the training NCO for the unit going. So that's really where I started to get into training. And let me rewind a little bit. So every time we went out on deployment or anything like that, we always trained when it came to, the mission set, which is very, very different. So when you have the opportunity to have a lot of training, you just have to track it. So that was really the way you learn how to train. And then coming out of that mission from Yemen, it kind of gave me the ability to understand that, hey, take this stuff seriously because eventually you will use it.
Eric, you have this impressive, intensive military experience. Was there any pivotal moment when you realized that the mission would turn more successful should the training be conducted differently?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the last mission that I kind of did, which was basically the October bombing of the USS Cole in 2000. We were part of the reaction force for that. So at the time of that, we had a very young platoon. We had guys, and I say a young platoon, when you look at the Marine Corps in general, it's a very young, it's a very young force. But our platoon, the average age at the time was probably 19, 20 years old. I was a 22-year-old corporal at the time, 21-year-old corporal at the time. That had basically a lot of guys were they're on their first deployment. Probably 70% of those guys were on their first deployment. So we had done a lot of training and a lot of works up into that. When you start talking about CQB, when you start talking about convoy operations, security operations, everything in between that, you know, you just kind of knew around that time. So this is pre 9/11. So it's hard to kind of put everybody in that mindset. But pre 9/11, there was not a lot going on outside of, the terrorist bombings, of 1998. Obviously it's the USS Cole mission. So we kind of knew that something, could happen at the time. We were we were prepared for it. I don't think that we expected it. So I'll say that we weren't expecting an attack, and neither was the ship. So when we deployed into Yemen and we showed up, everything had to work as we had trained up for that. How are you moving vehicles? How are you feeding these guys? What's your security plan for that? How are you moving bodies? The people that died, there was 17 sailors that were killed. So we had to figure out how are we moving them from the ship to the shore and still protect the boat, the ship, as well as having a small team then saying, hey, we have to go to protect the hotel as well. So imagine that you've got one team of guys that have to protect basically two assets in a foreign country. And it's been done before, but again, this is pre 9/11, so not a lot of assets were out there. So you learn a lot in the training that we did. you know I'm so happy that we did everything that we did right. Nothing ever went wrong. But really, that's kind of where, for me, training kind of came back as, wow, um, we're able to do this. These guys, went on, many of them went on to multiple deployments after the fact. But again, when you're sitting there, as a young NCO, you don't know what you don't know until after the fact, and you can look at it. So I just really took training seriously after that mission. But as a unit, you always want to send off that experience, that expertise to other platoons. And that's basically what happened. We came back from that deployment in December, and we literally ramped right back up. So most of those guys redeployed to other areas around the world. I only had 9 months left in my enlistment. So I was pulled from my platoon to headquarters, and that's where I went into the training shop. So after the Marines, what happened is I went to work for a company called FATS, Firearms Training Systems, later on known as Megan and Barris. I did a multitude of things there. I started off as weapons assembly, which is a very entry-level type job. From there, I actually went to work for installation and training. So I used to travel all around the world. I had the opportunity to travel as far south as Chile and South America and Argentina, all the way to Canada. I got to go overseas to Europe and Asia, in Middle East as well. So I had the great opportunity of going around and seeing different people and the way they train. So that was absolutely critical for me, and kind of just set me up later on from what I'm doing now.
And are there any profound differences in how people train?
Absolutely. Everybody thinks they do it the correct way. What you find is when you're working with other customers, the biggest thing that you'll see is just because they do it differently doesn't mean they do it wrong. They just have a different training set. Maybe they're operating in a different environment, or they have different set of rules that they have to abide by. Or it can be something just as simple as, hey, it's a different weapon system, different optic, a different type of gear that we use compared to other people. So everybody uses everything differently, and you just kind of have to adapt your training to that, the way they do it, not the way you do it.
The question is, can they then easily adapt to the actual required conditions if these conditions are different from what they were training for?
That's a good way of saying, that's why people train often and train differently. So most of the people that we used to work with when in my FATS days and everything, usually what they would do is they would learn how to learn our systems, our training systems, our weapons training systems, and basically adapt either lessons learned that they've learned from somewhere else or from their cadre, the people that actually teach them, and kind of apply it. So let's say if they've acquired a new weapon system, the easiest, fastest, better way to do it, and I can't say it for everybody, but if there is a simulator that you can use, then that gives you the opportunity to put multiple people in a simulator without having to waste ammunition, waste that weapon system, waste range time. So there are the values of, like, when you don't know how to apply something, that's the kind of the reason why I was in that role, fielding some of these new weapon systems to some of these customers. I mean, it afforded them the opportunity to basically use a new weapon system and apply it towards new ways of how they're going to employ it later on. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, modularity is probably the biggest key. And then adaptability. I think adaptability of anything, especially customers that see new things, they want to adapt it into their training immediately.
Let's talk a little bit about modularity in training environments. Like Trango Systems is fundamentally built on modularity. Can you walk us through what this modularity actually means in practice?
Having the ability to have the modularity in training helps you out tremendously. So let's say, for example, you need to get access to a shoot house. Everybody thinks, oh, I have a shoot house ready, they're available, I can just go out there and train. For some units, absolutely. For most units, no, that's not the case. It's not as easy as being able to get on the schedule. That schedule is sometimes booked out months in advance. And that can be detrimental sometimes. You might be going on an deployment and you need to get access to a good shoot house. Well, how do you do that without, trying to bump somebody off the system? Number one, look for another shoot house somewhere around your area and try to get access to that. But the other thing is like, how are you going to train in that particular shoot house can sometimes be an issue as well. Can you shoot live fire in it? Can you not shoot? Maybe it's a sim house, those type of things. So modularity is really big, for me when it comes to how us as a company, even myself, talk about, our products.
From your perspective, what specific training challenges do Trango shoot houses address? And can you maybe share a few examples of how those challenges show up in real training scenarios?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest things, like, let's talk about one of our shoot houses, right? A lot of our customers look at our shoot houses when they're looking for something. That's primarily the key, right? Is they look at our shoot house and go, wow, it's very modular, right? Let's say you just want to create a couple rooms and you want to be able to train interviewing techniques, site sensitivity, where you're placing objects in the house in that particular room or in that house where you want to send a dog in or you want to look in there. So being able to reconfigure on the fly and being able to set up your training quickly, and I say quickly as time is of the essence most of the time. So, there are other people out there that have modular walls, but to what extent? Either A, they're made out of wood, so they're super, super heavy. They can't be used outside. Those type of things. So yeah, they can be set up. They can be used as a shoot house, but now you're having to spend a lot of time, maybe a whole day, a whole week, in reconfiguring that house for a particular training set that you have to do or that you want to train. Having Trango's shoot house, the ability to have lightweight panels and stuff is you can change it on the fly. Someone can be uploading their ammunition or they can be getting a brief and the instructors can come back in and basically change out the layout of that house. So what you think is that layout can change on the fly. So you go in there, you think, oh man, I remember that there was 2 rooms left, hallway right type thing. Well, now you can just completely switch it up. You can move the hallway to the left or to the right or to the back. We just take out a hallway and create other rooms very quickly. Still looks the same on the outside, but the inside changes.
Let's talk about scenario diversity. How can this diversity be achieved? Moving walls, changing the position of doors or windows. Is there anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing that we take away from training is, no house is empty, or not many houses are empty when you go into the real world environment. But, for training is how do you do that, right? And so Eton and Hagai did a really good job in creating, a whole portfolio or a catalog of items that really fit in with each other. Number one, being able to set up a shoot house is great, but hey, can I create furniture? So, Trango's portfolio of furniture is an easy way to set up a shoot house that is fully furnished, and now same concept applies. So you're not having to lug super heavy items like you would if you were using real furniture, or run the risk of ricochets or anything if you do have a negligent discharge or an accidental discharge inside of a house that's furnished with metal products, right? So you don't want to have that shot fired and all of a sudden you get hurt in training, because people do get hurt in training. So That's number two. Number three, I think I would say, and probably the best thing is, having barricades and targets that are pretty realistic. It gives you the ability to kind of change things on the fly, so when you have realistic targets and realistic things that can be used in the real world, you can obviously immerse yourself in that training a little bit better than just having generic, what we would call rope rooms or empty rooms and say, hey, just imagine there's a chair here or a table here. You could actually set that up very quickly and not have to say, if we did something here, imagine furniture here and all of that. So that's kind of the tie-in of all of the products that they have.
Trango uses panel of foam as the basic material for their systems. Beyond the marketing claim of this ricochet-free, what practical advantages does this material have?
The material is something that's pretty novel in the approach, and most of the time when our customers see it, they're very surprised of what it is. We have targets out there that have been shot for thousands of rounds. So to talk about Pinella foam, which I have a small piece here, is when we talk about ricochet free, when you see something like this, it looks very basic. There's really nothing that you would look at it and go, oh, that's not much of an idea, but really a lot of thought was put into it. First of all, it's closed cell foam. So when you have the closed cell foam inside, it gives you that flexibility. So you can see how flexible it is. That flexibility allows it to be just kind of abused. You can move it around. It's super lightweight, but it's very, very tough. Then on the outside edges, so if you can see the little white and the gray, what that is just basically hard shell plastic. That hard shell plastic gives it a lot of rigidity. So, it's really hard for me to bend it, which it is bendable because it kind of flexes with the foam. So what it does is now you can abuse it. You can throw it on the ground. You can stack it high, but from the ricochet standpoint of where you're shooting it, essentially what would happen is when you shoot it, it's just going to punch right through and make a hole right through it. So you have to consider that you do have to have a backstop or a bullet trap on the back end. What most materials do, let's talk about like a hard plastic. A hard plastic will basically put a hole into it and start creating a bigger and a bigger hole, or they'll start kind of, bowing or anything. So the one thing that Pinella does is, yes, it does punch through, but it kind of seals back up after a while. So it has the ability to take a lot of rounds and not have to actually take the actual hit, and then it stays in there. So it's going to punch right through. Wood, another example, if you shoot, anything that's made out of wood, what tends to happen is it's going to splinter out. So all of our barricades that are made out of our material, the Pinella foam material, basically what it allows you to do is go through and it's going to punch right through. So it doesn't splatter. It doesn't do any of the things that wood or like a hard plastic would be. So that's really where Pinella foam comes into like you can just make multiple products, and that's where the walls, the barricades, the targets, they all kind of, differ in a way of, they're cut out differently, but it all applies under Pinella foam. I have my shoot house, and I've seen shoot houses out there for the last, 4 years. And yeah, they're abused. They've been shot up, but they're still being used. So it gives us the flexibility and the ability to use training equipment in both as a live fire shoot house or, as a sim house, or be used on a flat range, and you can just keep using it. But in terms of like it getting wet, yeah, it floats. I can confirm that. It definitely floats. I've thrown it in the pool just to see, and yeah, it floats. I mean, we use some of our target material for maritime targets with some of our customers.
Last question for today. Just for today, then we'll continue. So, from an instructor's perspective, what does the training day look like when you use modular structures, like Trango's shoot houses or CQB lanes? Can you give some examples?
Yeah, so I mean I can talk about my customers in generality. So I'll do that. So because I mean I use my stuff when it comes to my personal stuff, but it that really doesn't count because I use it all the time. So I've talked to customers and their pain points, right? Let's talk about pain points. Number one, most of your trainers usually have multiple jobs. They just are not a part of training. Sometimes they have to go do their own training. Sometimes, they're police officers full time or officers of what one degree or another, and they have to focus on those jobs. So being able to set up a shoot house in less than an hour is pretty key. So most of the time, if you wanted to do that, with super heavy panels, you need two or three, four, five, six people. You need ladders, you need hammers, you need screwdrivers, nails, drills, whatever, it uses. For our stuff, what the ability is that you can set this up early in the morning. Once it's set up, you know, you can train with it. And being able to train into a shoot house, you can basically set up your training syllabus for the whole day. So let's say today we're going to teach center fed rooms. You can set up multiple rooms or one room and just kind of sit in there and do that, right? And then you can just move a couple panels. You don't have to rebuild the whole house to basically go from a left or right fed room. You can just literally take two panels that were in the center, slide that one over to the side, and now you've got a right fed room. Once you're done with that, slide the other panels this way, and now you got a left fed room. So, having those things, having the ability to train very quickly that way is perfect. You're not having to kill your instructors. The time savings is critical, especially your instructors. I've been there where you're sitting there going, all right, we're done with training. All of the cadre need to stay back, or all the trainers need to stay back because we need to reconfigure the house for tomorrow's training, right? And based on that, I mean, that could be hours of time, right? So let's say people are getting off at 4, 5, 6 o'clock, and they're getting off at 7, 8 o'clock at night. It kind of sucks. So I often look at it when I see people that buy our houses. I tell them, just remember how long it took for you to set up your old house or your old barricades or however you're doing that, and just think of the time savings where you can send your people away. Go spend time with your family, go move on to the next task that you have to do. Instead of having to sit there and play with equipment. So that is really the gist of why Trango exists, and I think why I feel like we're probably the best company that does it right, over others. But of course, I'm a little biased.
That's okay, you should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were today with Eric Perez, the director of Trango USA. Keep following us for new podcasts and videos. Trango Systems, the Lego of shoot houses.